I've already done a run-through of Suede's career, but they've released one more album since then, so I get to do it in this format now.
I'm ranking the albums.
You can even explore pre-debut Suede and find some really rewarding material. I think they don't like to highlight that themselves now because they see it as juvenilia. And maybe it's juvenile of me, but some of it I really love. So a gorgeous debut album of suave and elegant rock music. There's not much variety in the tone as Suede were establishing what their sound is, so you can have an album full of it. It's poetry both in the words and in the melody. At the time I think they were seen as like Bowie copyists. I mean, if anything, that's Smith's copyists. That guitar technique of doing like lead and rhythm in one go, that's very Johnny Marr. I don't exactly file it as Bowie copyism, but then again, in retrospect, we've realized that most music that's any good has some inspiration from David Bowie. I agree that they're fans of him, but find me the copyism in here. I don't really know what you're listening out for. So I think that functioned as an insult at the time, but ultimately it's kind of a compliment. Just something we weren't able to file as one of the dodgy trends of the late 80s or early 90s, so that's the comparison people came up with. I think the spatial sound of this album dates it a bit, but you can still hear everything clearly, and the way that all the parts are layered, especially multiple guitar parts you wouldn't be able to play at once, is a real victory for arrangement, and the songs back that up. They deserve it. Obviously, a great debut. Then it's time to get pretentious and intra-band conflict, and they justify that. Well, at least the pretension. Yeah, this is the way to go epic, to take what was great about you and to remove what was too, sensationalized and just hone it into a masterpiece. It does some similar things to the debut, so you'll be satisfied if you like that, but you'll be more satisfied for it going further, wilder, weirder, darker, bigger. It's got a memorable format of ending on 4 very widescreen, atypical for Suede songs in a row, which might be inadvisable. That's something that could easily come across to the listener as a chore, but they were just on such great form that there's no sense of that. The majesty is earned. This is one of the best albums of rock music history, but then again, so are some more of Suede's. Then comes the pop pivot, done with such attention to detail that it's not really an artistic compromise. For the format of pop, Brett is intentionally reeling in his lyricism at this point, which you might find disappointing. One thing I've always enjoyed about Suede lyrics and nabbed for my own is the habit, quite an early on habit, of having the first line of the second verse be nearly homophonic to the first line of the first verse, but with a slightly different word, with a completely different meaning. Everything's very engaging in that approachable way. Now we've had Suede at their most aloof, it's time for them to be loof. By approaching overt, obvious pop with the same attention to detail as their prior work, they're managing to do it with artistic merit.
Didn't you know that chord they put at the middle and end of a chorus leading back to the tonic? That's called a suadence.
These are all deluxe editions with the B-sides piled onto an extra CD, which kind of makes sci-fi lullabies redundant. Suede's B-sides are near uniformly excellent, often better than the material that makes the albums. If I stopped to say that in each era of the discography, I'd just be saying the same thing for each one. This collection particularly highlights it, especially the first disc. Yeah, I won't let the retrospective adjustments to format override the brilliance of this collection. I think going synthy is seen as a red flag in a discography. I don't see it that way per se, but I think at this point Brett had run out of lyrics. Intentionally holding back one of your talents like that is pretty frustrating, and I think the popular culture interpretation of his lyrics can be a bit mean. Yes, he has a lexicon because that's good world building. On the subject of world building, find me 3 actual Suede songs with the word concrete in, and then we'll talk. Actually, find me 46 actual Suede songs with the word concrete in, then we'll talk. When a band has to work toward what they're mandated to do rather than what they want to do, will always be a bit ugly. The knowing shallowness to this and the compromising guitar does weigh it down. Paradoxically, this album is lacking for pacey songs, and yet the slow ones are clearly the best. There's still high-quality material on this.
The era of too many formats is showing its strain on the B-sides, but only just.
It's only the quality of Suede's discography that's brought out the negative adjectives for this one. Still very enjoyable, it strikes a new vibe for that discography. It's not a roaring success, it's a whispering success.
Success.
Then famously just losing it. I think yet again the B-sides of the era show that Suede hadn't entirely lost what they're great at, and they'd found some new things to be great at. They just didn't construct the right album out of it, the right disc one in this collection. Brett's new hoarse approach to singing is very misguided. I think that's seen in retrospect as a mistake. Honestly, I think by the end of the album, it no longer sounds like a band who lost its way, but one who found a new way, just a new way that's not really anywhere near as interesting as Suede have been in the past. Of course, they fizzled out not much later. What do you expect from a 90s band in the 2000s? I think in their final single they were onto something, this kind of very modern electro. With the right focus, they could have made this something to be more proud of, but there wasn't the right focus. There was fatigue. I'm including this because I did that Brett Anderson solo video and didn't include it in that. I don't know if I'll get around to doing a Butler career video. And at the time, with Suede broken up and the two credited songwriter-contributors from the first two Suede albums coming back together, this did seem like a creative reunion. If you've ever argued that Bernard Butler brought a particular depth to Suede, then this isn't a great exhibit for that. It doesn't sound particularly like early Suede. If anything, it sounds like Coming Up and A New Morning. Unlike Bernard's post-Suede projects of a jubilant wall of sound. It's a really compressed sound which doesn't help. A small few of the songs are great, are exactly what they ought to have been doing, and then there's some more songs.
Didn't you know being a bisexual man who's not had a homosexual experience is actually really valid and technically describes most men?
And then if you know the shape of one of these videos, you know we're coming up to a reunion. Skipping out the ugly music scene of the ooies that tried to treat rock bands as if they were going to chart like pop acts, because they did in the 90s. Now we can approach it with some maturity and recognize that genre doesn't really work that way now. And it's important for Suede to be Suede without being too stuck in their own past. Maybe at the time they should have paid a bit more attention to that last bit. I guess when you're coming back with a reunion album, you want to be quite typical. Doesn't Richard's signature look exactly like how he plays guitar? It's like a signature of arpeggios. So the sound of this is quite typical, because it ought to be, but maybe a bit too typical. It's a bit awesome, you can hear a strong energy to their reunion, but I feel this album really lets go toward the end. So the concise format of it and the sound of the first few songs makes you think that it's going to be a somewhat more mature version of Coming Up, 10 tracks that just strike in a row. But then the last 4 tracks undertake a massive pivot into Dogman Star territory, having 4 very spacious tracks. And at this point, the reunited Suede did not have the artistic chops to pull that off. These are 4 quite embarrassing tracks. Float is alright, just a bit disappointing. The whole album is absolutely soaked in reverb, particularly vocal reverb. It makes it quite aggravating to listen to. That reverb is almost turned into something artistic on What Are You Not Telling Me, but not quite. Then there's an embarrassing attempt to reuse the chords and the feel and the format of The Asphalt World to make another, like, relationship revenge song. It's kind of funny how earnestly they were trying that and how poorly it's pulled off. and then just a dull last track, but this is meant to be like a concept album about the continuum of a capital R relationship. And yet again, if you listen to the B-sides, other things recorded in these sessions that actually would be part of the story, so they'd be like deleted scenes. Some of those should have been subbed in, or maybe just added in. There's only 10 tracks, and they're definitely not the best 10 chosen. Maybe I'm doing relationships wrong, but this story of a relationship goes sour way too quickly. They could have spaced out the first half a bit and then got rid of the rubbish tracks at the end. Whatever. This album was almost the right thing to do, and half of it stands up really well. It's kind of by the numbers, and there's some bad numbers. Then they found what they actually want to do with a reunion. This has a creative triumph to it. No longer kowtowing to mainstream expectations, they're just writing what they want. It's still got the Suede vibe, because that's a consistent thing to do, but it's not held back by expectations. I think people who argue that Suede don't have the same chops without Bernard Butler maybe just haven't got this far. Everyone's giving it their all now, and Brett's found fresh things to sing about, back in the realm of artistic majesty. This new habit of having choruses that are 50% falsetto means I can't sing along anymore, but it's not about me. They're taking the format seriously, and it's approached with a maturity that I think makes this the most, resonantly album-like, and easily among their best. We've got a very similar vibe for the next one, but kind of just more in every direction. More symphonic, more confident, more weird, and absolutely smashing it. Stereotypically, a reunion would have lower quality work. That's not applicable here at all. I don't hesitate to rank this second. It may well have gone first, if not for one dud of a track. Then it was evident that Suede shouldn't and couldn't go any further in terms of scope, so they went concise again. But very much a new form of concise. This is a sort of post-punk sound.
I wonder what made them think of putting someone on a bed on the cover.
It's very refreshed, it's very driving, which might explain the subject of half the songs. Yet another absolutely correct move in career and in creativity. There's an intentional simplicity to the structure of these songs that makes them more immediately engaging, but might not justify as many return listens as some of their earlier work. Still very satisfying, still impressive Suede, and we can't wait to see what they do next, really. For a post-reunion band to be on their best form, to be on such a streak, really betrays the narrative. But hey, it's happening, and there'll definitely be more. Suede combined the primal power of rock with the beauty and the grotesquerie of poetic expression. That's kind of exactly what rock should be, and they've got a mostly impressive legacy, and it's ongoing. I imagine most of my viewers are already familiar, so this video is a bit redundant. It's just here for you to disagree with me putting Bloodsport below some then. So good luck with that. See ya.